Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shalom.
I'm Rabbi Paul Kipnes. This is our rabbinic intern, Sam Thong. And we are thrilled to be here as we celebrate Shabbat tonight. Cantor Doug is with his niece, his grand-niece and nephew who are becoming B'nai Mitzvah this weekend. And so he is off doing that. What's that? Locally, not far from here. So he sends his love. What's that? A different shul. They're up in, I don't remember where. But Noah and Joyce are here. Kyle and Rachel, I think, came in. And it's a whole Ganza Mishpacha gathering. And so Sam is here. We're also going to welcome in a little bit Joe Goldman from HIAS, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, that's doing incredible work with immigration, with refugees, but we'll talk about that later. But now, let's sing.
So we'll start with Hine Mato. Hine Mato Humanayim Shabbat Achim Gam Yachad. Hine Mato Humanayim Shabbat Achim Gam Yachad. Hine Mato Shabbat Achim Gam Yachad. Hine Mato Shabbat Achim Gam Yachad. Hine Mato Humanayim Shabbat Achim Gam Yachad. Hine Mato Humanayim Shabbat Achim Gam Yachad. Hine Mato Yavavai Yavavai Hine Mato Yavavai Yavavai Hine Mato Humanayim Shabbat Achim Gam Yachad. Hine Mato Humanayim Shabbat Achim Gam Yachad. How good it is to sit together. And this evening we're talking about social justice, so we're going to sing Olam Chesed Yibaneh. Together we will build this world from love. Olam Chesed Yibaneh. Yadadai, dai, yadadai, dai. Olam Chesed Yibaneh. Yadadai, dai, yadadai, dai. Olam Chesed Yibaneh. Yadadai, dai, yadadai, dai.
where to turn in this world, this beautiful, messed up world, where in Tel Aviv, 3 people were murdered as someone went shooting through the streets. And it took a while for them to find the other participants. In a country so beautiful, a country broken too. How do we live in this world of brokenness? And words are coming forth from across the world about those war crimes, the blatant murder of civilians in Ukraine. And we, a people who have seen and experienced and understand when evil turns and is done just to destroy, to hurt, to harm, to kill. We know what it feels like to be alone, and we want to find a way to open our mouths and our hearts and our pockets and help. This world so fragile, so broken, out there and here at home too. Tonight is Shabbat. It's a day that we're supposed to be able to sit back and breathe and take in, not to act on the world, but to let the world and its beauty lift us up and envelop us. And yet not tonight. For tonight we will pray, and we will be refreshed, and we will let go of some of that worry. And then with forgiveness we will dive back in as Joe comes forward in a while and teaches us what's happening and how we can, as Jews, help alleviate some of the pain. So when we light the candles, let it bring the warmth of holiness in here, the light of hope and possibility. And then we'll find our way through. I'm going to invite up Judy and Harry Friedman to light candles. The prayers are on page 2. Join with us in a nigun and then to sing. We invite you to turn to page 28. Let's rise for the Baruch Hu, call ourselves to worship, call ourselves to this holy moment to be God's partners and fix this world. my voice?
Can you hear my voice?
Do you understand?
Do you understand?
Am I awake?
Am I awake?
Am I prepared?
Am I prepared? Baruch hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Le'olam va'ed. Yalalai lai lai, 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 yalalai lai lai.
Please be seated. Remember this past week. Remember how you felt when you heard about what happened in Ukraine. Remember how you felt when you heard what happened in Tel Aviv. Remember how you felt when you read the newspaper or listened to the news or went online to the news and heard about the brokenness, or about the friend who was sick, or the friend who got cancer, or the people who were suffering. Remember that drained feeling. And remember that moment when maybe you felt you didn't know how you would get through. And what do? Cantor Doug told us. Page 35.
If you're lost, you feel afraid, and you don't know what to say, then listen to our God. Is there a question on your mind? Is the answer hard to find? Then listen to our God. Listen with all your heart and soul, and with all your mind. Write them and learn them and teach them well, every morning and night. Close your eyes and listen to our God. Quiet yourself, there's nothing to say. Stop all the chatter that gets in the way and listen to our God. When the wind and the thunder finally disappear, there's still a voice that you can hear if you listen to our God. You can hear it from the top of the highest hill, or from the valley below. It can come from the edge of the universe. It can come from within your soul.
Please be seated. Let's turn in our prayer books to page 39. Page 39. I want to welcome all who are worshiping with us on the live stream. Whether you're worshiping with us on Live Control, thank you to Live Control and Jacob Bronstein for all our live streaming needs, or if you're with us on YouTube or on Facebook, all our different channels, we thank you for worshiping with us. Please drop in the chat. Let us know you are here so we can feel that warmth and welcome you a little later. For those of us who are here, did anyone have parents who fled, not parents, but ancestors who fled another country in the last 3, 4, 5? Who was it? What's the relation to you and from where, and if you know why?
My grandparents fled from Russia because of the pogroms.
So, Laurie says her grandparents fled Russia because of the pogroms. Same for Richard. Kathy?
Same except Poland.
So Cheryl has people from Poland who fled because of the pogroms. White Russian Germany, Lithuania, Austria-Hungary, Poland,
Romania and Ukraine.
Okay. Belarusia. And so many of us had family that left from overseas where they were living, running away, many cases leaving everything, planning as well as they could. My great-grandmother, one of them, Bubby, what's her first name? Bertha. I knew Bubby. Bertha came over, and I think other relatives were supposed to come, and I may be pulling two stories together, but I know there's a story in the family of relatives who were going to come, and someone got sick, and they sent over one and not the others, and came young and without anybody, though there was family over here. That's the story of our people, not only from 3, 4, 5 generations ago, but from biblical times way long ago. The story of the Red Sea that we're going to sing about in a minute is the story of refugees from slavery, fleeing. Yes, the Torah says God sent plagues, as we'll talk about next week at our Passover tables. Next week. It's on the calendar, I'll get there. But it's the story of a people who were oppressed, who were persecuted, who found a way to go free. And they were scared, and we know how scared they were because of what happened at Mount Sinai. Moses, their leader, went up for 40 days and nights, and they started to freak out, and they went back to old ways, or the ways of their masters. That's our story, our people's story. And it's the story today of people we don't know, but who some of us have connections, and all of us need to have connections because the world is getting smaller and smaller. So at the top of page 39, let's read together in English, and then we'll sing Mi Chamocha on the next page. Together. Standing in the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before we ever stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. Page 40.
Mi chamocha ba'em nimat Adonai, 44, V'shamru. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל עוד היא לעולם, עוד היא לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
Page 48, please rise. Page 48. For the Amidah.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, Vekonei Hakol, V'zocher Chasei Avot V'imahot, Umevi Geula Livnei Bneihem, Leman Shemo Be'ahava. Melech Ozer Moshiach Umagen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Ve'ezrat Sarah. Page 50. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיה הכל אתה, רב להושיע. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיה הכל ברחמים רבים. סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה. ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל, ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיה הכל. Page 52. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סבא. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
We take a moment now for silent prayer, praying either the words on the page through page 60 or those in your heart. When you are finished, please be seated. Prayer for three leaders and for the world by poet Alden Solovey. Harachaman, O God of compassion, put an end to the war in Ukraine and all wars throughout the world. Look with favor on the refugees, the homeless, the wounded, the suffering, the starving, and the newly bereaved. Grant perfect rest under the canopy of your peace to those who have perished at the ugly hand of war. Extend your canopy of peace from the highest heavens down here to the earth. Bless Ukrainian president with the continued strength and resolve to defend his people against the onslaught, inspiring world sympathy and support. Bless United States President Joe Biden with wisdom and skill to face the challenge of history as Europe prepares for broader conflict and fears world war. Bless Russian President Vladimir Putin with a change of heart and soul, a change of mind to release the tools of war, to pick up the tools of peace. God of peace, release the citizens of Ukraine from occupation and war, grant them resilience and vitality, give them comfort and give them hope. End this violence and suffering for life renewed, for healing and building, for a better world. As the prophet Amos said, let justice come in waves like water and righteousness flow like a mighty stream. And as the prophet Isaiah goaded us, that nation should not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. O God, hear our voice. O God, remind us that we have a voice. O God, let us always remember that each of us should say, I have a voice.
I have a voice. My voice is powerful. My voice can change the world. I have a voice. My voice is powerful. My voice can change the world. Try that with me. I have a voice. My voice is powerful. My voice can change the world. I have a voice. My voice is powerful. My voice can change the world. My voice is powerful. My voice can change the world. I have a voice. My voice is powerful. My voice can change the world. Change the world. I will give of myself. I will reach out my hand. I will use this heart I've been given and take a stand. I have a voice. My voice is powerful. My voice can change the world. I have a voice. My voice is powerful. My voice can change the world. Change the world. I will fight for the truth. I'll stand up for what's right. I will use this strength I've been given and be alive. I have a voice. My voice is powerful. My voice can change the world. I have a voice. My voice is powerful. My voice can change the world. Let's lift our voices. I have a voice. My voice is powerful. My voice can change the world. I have a voice. My voice is powerful. My voice can change the world. Change the world. Change the world. Change the world.
A quick story. That song was written by Alana Arian, who is a lecturer at the Debbie Friedman School of Sacred Music, the Cantorial School in New York City. Her mom is a mamash, quite a professor, a teacher there, Mary Arian, one of the three people who are really changing the face of what it means to be a cantor, and the voice and the presence. Alana grew up at Kutz Camp, where I went to camp, and Michelle was there too. We actually met, but not each other, walking up the steps. I was walking in front of her. She was walking with my rabbi's wife, actually. She was working, Michelle, another program, and my rabbi's wife pointed and she said, too young. And then, I think a year later, something like that. Anyways, or 2 years later, because I grew up. Alana captured in that song a powerful notion. So we're in Washington, D.C. Rabbi Julia had this notion that the Religious Action Center brings teens to Washington every year, except for the last two because of COVID. And they learn and study with thinkers and young people and role models who teach them about Judaism and Talmud on various issues. And then they spend all night writing these lobbying speeches. And then they go into senator and Congress people's offices, sometimes speaking with them. They met with Kamala Harris 2 years before I think she ran. And they make their plea for their values and to lobby. We're finishing that, and they're so charged up, and they're all fapitzed in their suits and power suits. And we're walking by the Capitol building, and they're there, and they sort of look at each other and look around. And then they start belting out this song, I Have a Voice, My Voice is Powerful. So then fast forward, that was in January, confirmation is happening. And this was actually just before COVID. Confirmation is happening. I mean, COVID, this happened before COVID, and then COVID happened, and then we are at confirmation, and some of these same students are being confirmed, except it's happening online, and it's just a month and a half or 2 months after COVID started, and so they're upset and they're freaked out, and Cantor Doug and I, halfway after they gave their speeches and after they gave the teaching, Cantor Doug and I had a surprise for them. Because of our contacts, all of a sudden, onto the Zoom comes Alana Arian, starting to sing this song. And the kids lit up and belted it out. And we reminded them what they learned in Washington, what they felt at their confirmation ceremony, and what I hope all of us will take with us as we leave tonight, that each of us has a voice, and our voice can be powerful. Let it be for social justice, but let it also be for healing. Tonight we'll say a Misha Berach, a prayer for healing for all who are suffering. We bring into our hearts Tracy Steinauer and her family. She lost her mom a couple of days ago. The funeral will be, I think, in a month. Sister, sorry. Lost her sister. The reason I messed that up is because today we heard from Terry Abrams, who lost her mother just today, and we'll know tomorrow when the funeral is. We'll get that information out. So we hold their families in our hearts. Even as we do that, some of you here are asking for blessings of healing for your loved ones. If you are Zooming in with us, streaming in with us on the live stream or Facebook, drop it in the chat or the comments, their names. And as I go around the room, I invite you to mention the names of those you're asking for blessings of healing for. And remember, by saying it out loud, no one will catch it. But by saying it out loud, we can catch the need to ask about your loved one and offer strength and support. So we ask for blessings for. And my niece, Gilat. For all of them and all of us on page 253, 253, we sing this blessing of healing.
Strength, who bless the ones
if you want to talk about what's happening to people around the world, not just Jews, to understand a refugee crisis, this isn't the first, it's not the last. You want to go to people who know, not people who are grabbing things off the news, but have people on the ground all over and are connected with people who are on the ground and can really tell us what's going on. And so it became clear to me that when we needed to talk about refugees and immigration and the whatnot, that we would go to the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, because they have for generations, first for us Jews and then for others, been doing the work. And if you're in California, you want to talk to the best, and that is Joe Goldman. Joe is Community Engagement Director of the Western region of Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society of HIAS. Listen carefully and be able to maybe ask questions here, probably more afterwards. And then I hope you each will find a way to partner with HIAS and continue the work that has to be done. It's my pleasure to introduce Joe Goldman.
All right, great. Erev Tov, Shabbat Shalom. And thank you for the warm introduction. And it's wonderful to be with Orami in person and for being welcomed with such wide open arms. We must remember that before Putin invaded Ukraine, that there were over 84 million forcibly displaced people around the globe. Far more refugees than what we witnessed after the Second World War. So while we are here to focus largely on Ukraine this evening, because that is what's front of mind and in the news, I want to set some context. The global response to the Ukrainian refugee crisis is exactly how we must respond to other refugee crises. Yes, Ukraine is a huge deal because it's an unprovoked authoritarian nuclear power invading a sovereign nation, bringing war to Europe for the first time in over 20 years. Yes, it's a huge deal to the Jewish community because it's where so many of our ancestors fled and such a sizable Jewish community remains. Where so many of us with Ashkenazi roots know deep down that had our families escaped the jaws of history from the Shoah and Soviet repression, those Ukrainian Jews could be us. And we also know that far more people in the United States and Europe are responding to Ukraine's refugees the way they should, because the vast majority of them look like many of us. Polling shows sky-high bipartisan support for welcoming Ukrainians, while those numbers plummet for Afghans, Syrians, and virtually anyone with darker skin or proximity to Islam. So as we dig deeper into the Ukraine crisis, let's all keep in mind that we have the opportunity to learn from our response for Ukrainian refugees and build upon the chance to live out our Jewish values of B'Tselem Elohim, that we're made in the same image, Tzedek, Tzedek, Tirkdov, that we shall, justice, justice, you shall pursue, and of course, Tikkun Olam. After all, we are committed and commanded, to welcome the stranger no fewer than 36 times in the Torah. Now that I've set some context, let's dig into what's actually happening in Ukraine. Over 4.2 million people have fled Ukraine since Putin invaded, more than the entire population of the city of Los Angeles. Roughly 2/3 went to Poland alone. Another 6.5 million are internally displaced within Ukraine itself. This war sparked the largest refugee crisis in Europe since World War II, and perhaps the fastest forced displacement in human history. Millions more are projected to flee the country and be displaced within it. The escalation of the conflict is resulting in devastating humanitarian consequences. There are frequent shortages of currency, food, and medical supplies. LGBTQ people are at severe risk wherever Putin's army advances. Since men aged 18 to 60 are banned from leaving the country, those fleeing are women, children, and, of course, older people. HIAS is taking a three-pronged approach to the emergency response for Ukraine, supporting those displaced within Ukraine itself, helping refugees in immediately neighboring countries, and then resettlement in the rest of Europe, Israel, and the United States. HIAS is no stranger to Ukraine. In fact, it was the first Tsarist anti-Semitic pogroms in the 1880s in what is now Ukraine that sparked HIAS's creation as the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. We just go by our acronym now, because the Jewish community mobilized out of existential necessity to help our people reach shelter, safety, and self-sufficiency out of harm's way. And yet, even as we've grown into an agency spanning 5 continents in 17 countries, our commitment to Ukraine has never wavered. We've helped people flee pogroms, Nazis, Soviets, and Putin's invasion of the Donbas and Crimea in 2014. In 2001, HIAS established an office in Kyiv to help Ukrainian Jews and other religious minorities seeking to migrate to the United States. And later, to help those from across the Middle East, Africa, and Asia who are seeking asylum within Ukraine. In 2014, we spun off and transformed our HIAS Ukraine office into an organization called Right to Protection, R2P, which provides legal and humanitarian aid to those internally displaced from Putin's first Ukraine invasion, with 10 offices across the country and 162 staff. R2P remains an inextricable part of the HIAS family. Most R2P staff evacuated to Lviv and elsewhere in Western Ukraine, bravely helping Ukraine's internally displaced people while being displaced themselves. HIAS will continue serving as R2P's primary fundraiser and representative abroad, so it can focus on serving its clients within Ukraine's borders as much as possible. HIAS and R2P are especially on the front lines of fighting for our many asylum seeker clients from outside of Europe who are now experiencing well-documented racial discrimination within Ukraine and its neighbors while trying to seek safety from Putin's violence. As more of the fighting shifts south and east in Ukraine, we are seeing a number of Ukrainians returning to the country, but mostly in its west. It means that there will continue being millions of forcibly displaced people exactly where most of R2P's staff is based. Once the invasion began, HIAS also established partnerships with Jewish community organizations in Moldova, Poland, Slovakia, and Romania to ensure that they have the infrastructure in place to welcome refugees of all backgrounds. HIAS's emergency response team traveled from the US to Lviv and other parts of Ukraine, yes, into the war zone, to further assess how we can best support R2P and its many internally displaced clients, many of whom are about to become refugees once they leave the country. Other colleagues are at the Polish-Ukrainian border working directly with our European staff and Jewish community leadership to identify appropriate longer-term and continent-wide responses. We're seeing countries that Jews once fled transform into safe havens for those seeking refuge, Jews and non-Jews alike. HIAS partnered with leaders such as the Chief Orthodox Rabbi of Poland to provide extensive technical support to help transform their communal institutions into humanitarian aid providers. The world-renowned Jewish Community Center in Krakow mobilized to collect essential items like food, diapers, and medicine, and turned their building into refugee housing. As their director of programming put it, now we are having a refugee Shabbat 24/7, noting that Putin invaded barely a week before Jewish communities around the world observed refugee Shabbat. My boss and vice president just wrapped up a massive multi-day training in France with Jewish community leadership from across Europe to discuss private sponsorship and resettlement. The Welcome Circle model, which is being used to help resettle Afghans in the United States, can be adapted and implemented by different local European communities to receive Ukrainian newcomers. More on Welcome Circles later. The training included Ukraine Jewish Committee Director Eduard Dolinsky, himself now a refugee, as many Ukrainian Jews are electing to remain in Europe and wish to be fully included in the decision-making process of resettlement as much as possible. Here in the United States, HIAS immediately advocated for the Biden administration to designate Ukraine for temporary protected status, TPS, in 18 months, a victory we secured exactly 1 week after the war began, ensuring that no Ukrainians will be deported. The UN Slovakia ambassador recently convened a breakfast for HIAS to meet with the UN ambassadors of Ukraine, Moldova, Poland, Hungary, and Romania, alongside representatives of Jewish communities from each country to scale our humanitarian response. We're also holding our leaders accountable for words that aren't followed by actions. Though President Biden said that we'd welcome 100,000 refugees, he never followed up with a concrete plan. There's no process. Instead, we're now seeing thousands of Ukrainians fly to Mexico to seek asylum at our southern border, or arrive here with tourist visas, meaning that they won't be placed in critical resettlement programs that offer federally funded case management support and therefore must fend for themselves. With Poland taking the equivalent of 60 million people entering the United States in a matter of weeks, our country must engage in responsibility sharing. Just because Eastern and Central Europe are hosting most refugees doesn't mean that the rest of the world should just sit by and let it happen. After all, when the last war broke out in Europe, the US immediately said that we'd take in 20,000 Kosovars as part of our response alongside NATO activity. The US must play a role, which is why HIAS continues to mobilize folks like you to apply as much pressure as possible on the Biden administration to do the right thing to welcome those who wish to flee to our shores. Israel is an additional significant focal point for Ukrainian refugees. Thank God we have Israel today, as tens of thousands are applying for Aliyah in the wake of this war. And as a reminder, Israel's home to nearly 1 million Jews from the former Soviet Union, and tens of thousands of them have non-Jewish loved ones who are also citizens of Israel through law of return. It means that, understandably, many non-Jews are fleeing to a safe country where they have relatives and shelter awaiting them. HIAS Israel's legal team has been flooded with calls for assistance from dozens of the over 15,000 Ukrainians who have fled to the country so far as they seek to reunite with Jewish and non-Jewish relatives living in the country. Before I proceed, here's a disclaimer. HIAS is a Zionist agency that proudly helped build the state by resettling people in every wave of Aliyah, even those predating Israel's independence. Israel's home to HIAS's oldest permanent country office opened in 1951, and like any country HIAS operates in, we should expect Israel to do the bare minimum of its own stated legal commitments to its inhabitants who seek safety for their loved ones, and in Israel's case specifically live up to its own self-professed Jewish democratic values. I say so personally as a proud Zionist who fought BDS in the Bay Area for 5 years, who has gone to Israel 8 times in the past 13 years, including this past November with my husband, and as someone who had one of his closest friends carried upstairs into a random apartment building for safety last night in Tel Aviv because she has a physical disability and couldn't run from the restaurant where she was having dinner on Dizengoff Street when a terrorist opened fire. With that said, many people arriving in Israel can be refused entry for a multitude of reasons. Just like in the United States, the decision to refuse entry requires immediate legal response. For example, HIAS mobilized pro bono attorneys with the help of many in Israel's robust tech industry to work through the night to prevent the deportation of 2 children who miraculously escaped bombardment in Ukraine, where they were living with their grandparents, to Poland, where they caught a flight to Israel, where their undocumented mother lives. Our team secured the children's release with a bond of roughly $6,000, which 20,000 shekels, it's a lot in Israel, just minutes before their scheduled 5 a.m. deportation. Our case, which was supported by the conservative and reform movements in Israel, resulted in greater impact litigation as the judge directed the government to give Ukrainian refugees who are ruled ineligible to stay in Israel 48 hours to appeal their case, as well as be informed in writing in both Ukrainian and Russian of their right to legal counsel and right to appeal. We know that Israel's in a very difficult security situation with its decades-long conflict with Palestinians and with Russian soldiers based in Syria along its northern border. And we're also acutely aware that Israel is experiencing a massive wave of Aliyah not seen since the days of Shamir and Rabin, and that it's playing a critical role in sustaining the little diplomacy that remains between Ukraine and Russia, and has a very fragile coalition government. That's why HIAS continues to collaborate with our partners at JDC, the JFNA, Jewish Agency for Israel, and others to ensure that Israel has the resources it needs to equitably and fairly welcome refugee newcomers. Ukraine is home to roughly 44 million people, roughly 200,000 Jews, depending on how you count. It's home to the 7th largest Jewish community on the planet. The pin I'm wearing says, "My people were refugees too," and how it does hurt me to say that my people are refugees again. And I want to make one point abundantly clear. HIAS and our partners will work day and night to help every person fleeing Ukraine, Jews and non-Jews alike. They must get access to the safety and refuge that they deserve. There are too many in our community who viewed this work as an either-or proposition, but at HIAS it is and always will be moving forward a both and. Most of the solutions to help Jews and non-Jews are the same. Whether a refugee wants to get to Poland or to Israel, they all must travel by land to escape Ukraine. Ukraine, called Ukraina in both Ukrainian and Russian, literally means borderland. Yes, it's geopolitically, it's the borderland of many different empires that ruled over it. From Russians to Poles to back to Russians and Soviets and Nazis and Soviets again. It's also the borderland of fragile democracy and authoritarianism. Just as Israel literally translates to struggle with God, I see another meaning with Ukraine for the Jewish community today. We are confronting the borderlands of our own emotional and intellectual challenges as Jews, of recognizing the need to stand up for our own people and for others. We're at the borderlands of the universalist and particularist experiences that shape Jewish history, culture, and values. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, the Jewish grandson of a Holocaust survivor, lives both literally and figuratively in those borderlands. As a Jew, I take great pride in Zelensky, fighting for his own diaspora country, proving that we Jews can be accepted and admired by billions around the globe and inspire fear in authoritarian dictators. If Zelensky can fight for Ukrainians of all backgrounds, of Jews and non-Jews, then so can we. Months before any one of us who isn't in the CIA knew of imminent threat to Ukraine, our community mobilized to welcome the stranger. American Jews have played a massive role in empowering the 76,000 Afghans airlifted to the United States after the fall of Kabul. Why? Because it's part of who we are as Jews. To pull from Hatikva, welcoming the stranger gets to the core of Nefesh Yehudi, the soul of the Jew, and it gets right to the heart of who we are as Americans too. We have an obligation to welcome the stranger, especially those who put their lives on their line for our country, for NATO, and humanitarian NGOs over the past 2 decades. The journey to help Afghan refugees hasn't been easy. Let's look at some numbers and history for some greater context, and don't worry, I won't quiz you after services. Our resettlement system was gutted under the previous administration. In the 2020 to 2021 fiscal year, we only welcomed 11,000 refugees, down from a bipartisan average of 95,000. Yes, now we have an ostensibly pro-refugee administration which reset refugee admissions to 125,000 for the new fiscal year that began on October 1st, meaning that critical funding would be released to NGOs like HIAS and our partners to hire case managers, social workers, translators, and others in the public-private partnership that defines refugee resettlement. Then we could go off into the sunset, rebuild the system, and live happily ever after, right? Except that's not what happened. Kabul fell in mid-August, 6 weeks before the new fiscal year, and the administration very clearly didn't have an evacuation plan. Normally, a resettlement agency has a lead start of at least 10 days to 3 weeks before new clients arrive. But when 76,000 arrived all at once, the system was completely unprepared. Given the unprecedented strain on our resettlement system, a solution known as sponsor circles is being pioneered across the United States, modeled on the private sponsorship program that's wildly popular in Canada. With deep experience in refugee resettlement and honed strategies for educating, organizing, and mobilizing the Jewish community, we launched the HIAS Welcome Circle program. There are 32 circles nationwide, with 13 of them based right here in Southern California, and 2 more are in the pipeline. Remember those Ukrainians who are seeking asylum? Well, now we're seeing American Jewish communities utilize resources from the HIAS Welcome Circle program to provide similar support, as most of the tools are the same. So where do we go from here? What do we do to continue welcoming the stranger when so many crises loom large? Normally, I would come to you with lots of advocacy requests. My background is in politics, so I really live for that. But for now, financial assistance is the primary need for Ukraine, and I'll tell you why. Cash is often the best thing to give people in crisis, empowering them with the agency of choosing what they need most while supporting the local economy, both in their home country if they're internally displaced and in the host countries where the politics are already turning against them. Supply chains already exist in Ukraine's bordering countries to procure the products needed to serve refugees. The last thing that HIAS, R2P, and virtually any other humanitarian agency needs right now is the logistical burden of airlifting goods from here to the region. Funding also ensures that we can implement critical mental health programs, prevention of domestic violence, protection of women, girls, and LGBTQ people, as well as continue mobilizing our long-term resettlement efforts across the globe. Donations don't always feel as great, but the impact is extremely powerful. In addition to funding, we need you to join HIAS in asking the Biden administration to develop a comprehensive resettlement plan so we can truly resettle 100,000 Ukrainian refugees as they promised. We also need you to lobby state lawmakers to support the California Extended Case Management Program, which would help mitigate the challenges of our system that was originally unprepared for such a significant surge in refugees. It would ensure that our state is ready to welcome a surge of Ukrainian refugees and those from elsewhere around the world. And of course, you can consider forming a HIAS Welcome Circle for the last phase of Afghan resettlement of the 3,500 who are coming off of U.S. military bases abroad. And to work with us on any of these issues, just visit HIAS.org. I know that many of my words may bring discomfort, but let's leverage that discomfort into the concrete actions and much more that I shared with you today so that our community remains steadfast in our help for refugees long after they leave the headlines. After all, the entire resettlement system was established by the United Nations in the 1951 Geneva Convention on Refugees in explicit response to what happened to Jews in the Shoah, because our people didn't have the legal framework to flee. Despite the system's profound imperfections and many governments' resistance to enforce it, now we Jews, and all people, have the obligation to sustain and improve it. As we navigate the borderlands of these uncertain times, may we find strength in our Jewish identity, our history, and our culture. Welcoming the stranger is who we are. Toda rabba and Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Joe. So powerful. So much to do. Almost too much. And yet, we cannot get lost in compassion fatigue. You know, that feeling when there's just so much pain and so many problems in the world that I don't want to try anymore. So, Joe laid it out really easily. Number one, go to HIAS.org, HIAS.org. Give money, go to their action button and figure out what to do, and through them you can lobby the administration and find out about California, what we can do here. It's not enough to care. We have to act. That's the difference between Judaism and other religions. How you feel is less important than what you do. Secondly, when you don't know what to do and you want to do more, Orami has set up a refugee and resettlement fund. You just go to orami.org/donate. That money will go to organizations that are doing work. First among them will be HIAS. We'll use a little bit of that to help our own. You know that Andrew Fromer, his wife Olya's family are going. The men are staying, but her mother and sister and some others are going to Poland, maybe for a little while, maybe for more. And they have set up a GoFundMe, but since I can never remember where to go on it, if you go to Orami, we will make sure that money gets to help them. And then we were exploring if there are people who want to be involved in a refugee circle. Please be in touch, send me an email or a text, and we'll put it together and see how we can help in the resettlement process. Too much work to be done, but remember, the reason we are all sitting here, and so many of you who are zooming in, is because people came over. And don't kid yourself. They did not come over and pull themselves up by their bootstraps. There were organizations like HIAS, but also plenty of non-Jewish organizations that helped us Jews. And so we have to do the same. Whether they're Ukrainians that look like us or people from Afghanistan who are like us or from anywhere else. At Kutz Camp, where Michelle and I met, we sang a song, Aniva Ata Nishana Et Ha'olam, you and I will change the world. It's not for us to finish this work. Lo alecha hamlacha ligmor. V'lo ata ben chorin lihipatel mimena. But we cannot stop from trying. So let's leave here tonight and go out and do the work. That's what we're called to do. Shabbat Shalom. A few announcements. Apparently next Friday and Saturday is Pesach. So get some matzah. A gift is coming for you. You know how when you have your matzah and you open up the box, those crumbs go everywhere? And then it sits somewhere, and then maybe we have a solution for you. Check your mail. It should be there in the next couple of days. That's number one. Number two, I think on Tuesday's email, we will have a number of resources, readings to use in your Seder, some rituals connected to refugees, and some other readings. Bring those in. Remember, for those of you who have other people coming, Pesach is not supposed to be boring. It's a multimedia, tangible holiday where you get to play with your food and learn about it. So use songs, use videos, tell stories, dress up, anything you can do. If the grandkids or the kids get bored, you're doing it wrong. And if you need some help figuring it out, give me or Cantor Doug a call. And so we continue on with our service with Kaddish. I want to include, as we prepare for Kaddish, we take a moment to remember those people who were felled by terrorists in our Holy Land in Israel this last 2 weeks. Just a few days ago, Eitam McGinney, 27 years old, who was recently engaged, Toma Murad, Eitam's childhood friend, also 28 years old, and Barak Lopen, 35 years old, a father of three, a former Olympian who represented Israel at the 2008 Beijing and the 2012 London Olympics. And we also remember the ones who died in these also throughout Israel from terrorists. Amir Chori, an Israeli Arab, 32. Rabbi Avishai Yechezkiel, 29. Rabbi Yaakov Shalom, 36. Dmitry Mitrik, a Ukrainian citizen, 31 years old. Viktor Sorokofut, a Ukrainian citizen, 23 years old. The last two lived in Illinois for a while. Shirel Abukart, 19. Yazan Falach, a Druze, 19. Laura Yitzchak, 43. Rabbi Moshe Karbitsky, 50. Dorit Yachbas, 49. And Menachem Yezkiel, 67. Along with them, we add the names of our own loved ones we're remembering at the time of Kaddish. If you're streaming in with us, drop their names in relationship to you in the chat. If you are here, as I bring my hand around, we mention their names aloud. Tonight we are remembering. May their memories be for blessing. Let's turn to page 294, and please rise. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabba, be'alma divarach chirutei v'yamlich ma'achutei, b'chayechon v'yamechon v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agalau v'zman kariv emru amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevarach le'olam ul'olmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudisha brichu le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata dameran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shloma rabba min shamaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mrumav Hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. May the one who brings peace to the high heavens bring peace to us, to all Israel and all the world, as we say together, amen. Put your books down if you're comfortable. Hold your loved ones close. Hold yourselves close, or bring those loved ones into your heart like I'm bringing you into my heart. And with the help of our rabbinic intern, Sam Thal, who, by the way, she plays music here. She plays some music at Hebrew Union College, at camp background, and all over, leads services in various synagogues. There are at least 3 major tunes, nusach, for Avot v'Imachot and Gvurot. And we who know them have to jump back and forth to figure it out. You did marvelous, and we look forward to doing even more. She will help coordinate the outside guests and cantors who come in and sing, our own congregants who will be singing, taking care of the sound system, rehearsals, and the like. And so, Hashkivenu, our nighttime prayer. Shalom, v'ha'amidenu shomrenu, l'chaim, ufros aleinu, ufros aleinu. Amen. Shelter us beneath thy wings. O Adonai, guard us from all harmful things. O Adonai, keep us safe throughout the night, till we wake with morning's light. Teach us daily wrong from right. Oh, Adonai. Amen. Most of us will go to sleep tonight, safe in our homes, with a shelter over our heads. And yet, on the other side of the world, and on the other side of this country, and all over the world, there are people going to sleep without any shelter, And it's for us, because we sing this song, to extend the shelter of peace we feel to them. That's what Jews do. And then we can really sing and pray and say, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Sam. Thank you all who are worshiping with us. Shabbat Shalom and good night. Go schmooze. Yeah. Oh, we go, grape juice and Kiddush. We raise white. Hello, hello. We raise up our Kiddush cup. And we sing together, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagadol. L'chaim. It's grape juice. And a little bit of a challah. Remember, this is a metaphor. We are used to plenty of food, but there are people around the world with next to nothing. We sing, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Shabbat Shalom.